here's what Janet Yellen had to say about whether or not the U.S. can afford two wars.
Can America, can the West afford another war at this time?
I think the answer is absolutely. America can certainly afford to stand with Israel and to support Israel's military needs. And we also can and must support Ukraine in its struggle against Russia.
Okay, so she says we can. This is, by the way, the woman who said that inflation was transitory. And then she later had to backtrack and say, okay, fine, it wasn't transitory after all. We're stuck with this inflation. So we have to take her opinion a bit with a grain of salt on that one, because the most drastic thing that has happened to us economically in the last quite a while has been inflation in this country. Inflation has affected every single person in this country. And Janet Yellen thought, it's transitory. And meanwhile, it absolutely was not. So she's saying we can afford these two wars. What are we sinking our teeth into? How many trillions of dollars in national debt? We have more debt than we've ever, we've got debt up to our eyeballs, actually beyond our eyeballs at this point in this country. And again, a whole slew of things that we should be taking care of on our own soil, protecting our border, taking care of Americans. And yet that is not happening. We're instead just shipping off gobs and gobs and gobs of money to Ukraine and Israel. But according to her, we can afford it. So can you really afford it? I mean, think about that. What are you willing to give up? Right now we have sky high gas prices, food prices are through the roof, utilities are out the window. I mean, everything has gone up. Inflation is insane. Health insurance premiums are going way up. Everything, inflation has just seeped into every aspect of our lives. So what part of your budget, as you're sitting down at your kitchen table, what part of your budget are you willing to say, you know what, Janet Yellen, I can go with less food so that we can support these wars in Ukraine and Israel? Or you know what, Janet Yellen, I can go with a couple more dollars a gallon in gas in order for us to support these wars in places where the vast majority of Americans have never even traveled to, or even could locate on a map for that matter. Here's Joe Biden. He was asked the same question. We can't play for you the clip because it was 60 minutes and they copyright their stuff. So, but he was asked by Scott Pelley, are the wars in Israel and Ukraine more than the United States can take on at the same time? And Biden's answer was, of course not. We're the United States of America. We can, of course, handle it. He says, of course we can. He says, however, so that was his answer on that one. He had a little bit more to say that we'll get into a little bit later in the show about the humanitarian crisis going on in Gaza and what he thinks Israel should do or not do. But when it comes to the actual wars, he says in 60 Minutes that we are America. So obviously we can handle all the wars in the world. We are the Roman Empire. What made the Roman Empire fall? Right, all of their tentacles being out everywhere they possibly could be and ultimately not taking care of their people. That is also why the USSR collapsed during the Cold War. One of the reasons was because we were in a Cold War and an arms race. And when you spend all that money on militarizing and doing endless wars and proxy wars around the world, you end up sucking your population dry of the things that they need. And apparently our U.S. world leaders are hell-bent on doing that to us. They want to repeat the Roman Empire. They want to repeat the collapse of the USSR. They're really big into just sucking us dry into war. The military-industrial complex has a real firm grip on our political class, and they insist that we give them all of our kitchen table money. We give them every dime we've got in order to go towards war in places that many of us have never even seen. The U.S. is now preparing troops, U.S. troops. They're preparing 2,000 troops at this point to send to the Middle East. Now they claim, there's always a claim, so take it again for a grain of salt because things could always shift. These are troops, these are battle-ready troops, but they claim that these are not troops meant for battle. They say that 2,000 members of the U.S. military across the armed services could deploy to the Middle East to support Israel in its war against militant group Hamas. However, they won't serve in a combat role yet, they claim, right? So the troops, if deployed, could serve in an advisory role or provide medical support, U.S. officials told the Wall Street Journal, and are not to be deployed for combat. The 2,000 personnel are stationed in and out of the Middle East, including some in Europe, and it is not clear where they will be sent or what needs to happen for the U.S. to deploy them, the journal reported. So we're sending these troops. This comes 2 days after the Pentagon announced that a second aircraft carrier, the USS Dwight Eisenhower carrier strike group, is going to the eastern Mediterranean to deter hostile actions against Israel or any efforts towards widening this war. And there is a real concern about the war widening into the greater Middle East, that other countries are going to be coming to the aid of the Palestinians, and that there's going to be a bigger conflict for Israel. At this point, Israel has been bombing Syria, bombing Gaza, and Hezbollah as well in Lebanon. So the war is already seeped out beyond Hamas in Gaza. They are going after Syrian targets, claiming that Syria is launching rockets at Israel. The Syrians dispute this. They say that's not true. They're just indiscriminately bombing at us because ultimately this is what they've wanted to do for some time, that this is just, an excuse to widen the war a bit. Hezbollah has not seemed to be wanting to increase tensions. They're not seeming to want to escalate the conflict, but everybody has warned Israel, the Arab nations in the Middle East has warned Israel that that they're on the ready, that they are ready if they escalate this conflict against the Palestinians, if they feel that things have gone too far, that they will come in and they will do something about that. That is why many of the world leaders have been rushing around. Antony Blinken was traveling around the Middle East trying to calm everything down, and we're going to get to that a little bit later in the show. So here you've got Joe Biden and Janet Yellen saying, okay, we can afford this. We certainly can't afford it, but they're claiming that we can. They're gaslighting us into believing it. Meanwhile, a congressional report, you will not believe this, or maybe you will, but a congressional report has just come out saying that the United States needs to be ready for simultaneous wars. And they're not saying Israel and Ukraine. Those are not the wars they're talking about. They instead issued this report saying that the U.S. needs to be ready for simultaneous wars with China and Russia at the same time, that we need to ready our nukes is what they're claiming. It says the United States must prepare for possible simultaneous wars with Russia and China by expanding its conventional forces, strengthening alliances, and enhancing its nuclear weapons modernization program, a congressionally appointed bipartisan panel said on Thursday. So this comes from the Strategic Posture Commission, which is also known as the Congressional Commission on the Strategic Posture of the United States. It was established to help Congress analyze and make recommendations regarding the United States' long-term posture in foreign affairs. And what they're saying is, in this report that they delivered to Congress, was get ready for big war, get ready for nuclear war with China and Russia. The report here, still reading from this Reuters article, says that the report from the Strategic Posture Commission comes amid tensions with China over Taiwan and other issues and worsening frictions with Russia over its invasion of Ukraine. A senior official involved in the report declined to say if the panel's intelligence briefings showed any Chinese and Russian nuclear weapons cooperation. So they have no evidence of any intelligence that is leading us to feel like we need to arm up. We need to spend endless gobs of money readying our forces and getting more nukes. There's no intelligence that they're pointing to. They're just declining to say, which means they don't have any. They said, we worry there may be ultimate coordination between them in some way. So they're just worried, which gets us to this two-war construct, the official said, on condition of anonymity. So they don't want to be pointed out as the big warmonger that they are. Or they don't want to be pointed out for the fact that, we would then look into their funding and maybe find that they're somehow benefiting or sitting on a board of a big military industrial complex company or something like that, right? So it says the findings would append current U.S. national security strategy, calling for winning one conflict while deterring another, and require huge defense spending increases with uncertain congressional support. So right now, the U.S.'s strategic strategy is bad enough, wanting to win one war while deterring the other. Good luck with that. China and Russia have announced that they are together, they're linked, that essentially war with one is war with the other. They've made this very clear in statement after statement. And so it's going to be very difficult to wage war with one and deter one with the other. And so now you've got this this Strategic Posture Commission saying that we're going to need huge defense spending increases. They said, quote, "We do recognize budget realities, but we also believe the nation must make these investments." The Democratic chair, Madeleine Creedon, a former deputy head of the agency that oversees U.S. nuclear weapons, and the vice chair, John Kill, a retired Republican senator, said in the report's preface. So you've got Democrats and Republicans getting together and saying, we must spend more on defense because Russia and China are coming for us. I don't think that there is a single ounce of threat of either Russia or China invading the United States, coming to the United States, bombing the United States. I don't think there's any threat of that whatsoever. But yet we got to be on the ready with nukes, and we've got to up our defense spending. Once again, as we're spending gobs of money in Ukraine and gobs of money now for sure in Israel, we already give Israel, they're the number one recipient of U.S. foreign aid over any other country, minus the recent last couple of years to Ukraine. We've been giving a lot of money to Ukraine. That has outspent what we give to Israel. But by and large, as a whole, as we've been giving Israel billions of dollars year after year after year after year, Israel is still the largest recipient of U.S. foreign aid. So, and then Ukraine now is right there. So now you've got all of the congressional members getting ready to nominate Jim Jordan so that they could vote on increasing spending to Israel. So we're going to increase our funding to Israel. We have gobs of money being sent over to Ukraine. And now on top of it, we need to ready our forces and get our nukes ready for war with China and Russia. This is never ending as we are suffering in our own country, unable to pay for Americans to have a good life. The collapse of an empire, everybody. Addressing a briefing held to release the report, Keel said the president and Congress must take the case to the American people that higher defense spending is a small price to pay to hopefully preclude a possible nuclear war involving the United States, China, and Russia. Take the case to the American people. Do you know how they take the case to the American people? They don't stand there at the pulpit and say, let's rationalize and reason and use logic as to why we need to increase our defense spending, why we need to posture against China and Russia. They don't do it that way. What they do is they use messaging and propaganda to brainwash us using media. They use the mainstream media, their mouthpieces at places like CNN and Fox News to tell us China bad, to paint all of these pictures of bad, evil China. I agree that China is a competitor. Absolutely, we should be competing against China. We should be competing against Russia. We should not think that there are, friend in the world necessarily, but they're not really our foe either, except that we are competing on an economic battlefield, not the actual battlefield. But our response to trying to limit economic growth of other countries is to blow them up. That has been the U.S. foreign policy strategy for a really long time. Anytime we see countries increasing, we say, wait a minute, we got to halt this somehow. How are we going to do it? We need to debilitate them. A good way to do it is to destabilize them, bomb them, put radical Islamists in their country or something along those lines in order to make them fight themselves rather than focus on economic development. So what they'll do is they will use images of savagery. They will tell us that there's genocides happening. They will tell us that there's an untold number of human rights abuses and lack of democracy, or they're coming after us in order to get us to agree to this level of spending. That's how they're going to do it. They don't have any other way. They have to try to brainwash us or somehow convince us. And the way they do it is they pull on those emotional strings. And we should be aware of this so that we can say, are you really telling me the truth? Or are you just trying to get me in a tizzy so that I want to then go to war? Because it's almost human nature to want to battle. It seems to be anyway, that no matter how much we talk about being anti-war, no matter how much we talk about ending endless wars, there's always a trigger button for people, it seems. And as we've seen in this current conflict with Israel and Hamas, is that a lot of people who've been very anti-war, very America first, suddenly when it comes to this particular conflict, switched a flip and or flipped a switch and are very much pro-war. We saw this happen with the pro-Ukraine crowd. a lot of anti-war people, mostly Democrats, who've always championed ending wars. They gave Joe Biden a big pat on the back when he got us out of Afghanistan, despite the fact it was a complete disaster the way he pulled us out of that country. And then suddenly, when it came to war against Russia, proxy war against Russia, they were all in. So everybody seems to have a button that could be pushed to get us to be more engaged in warfare. And the lobbyists know this. They spend millions of dollars on research to figure that out. That's what their job is. They find out what is the soft spot, what's the button for the American people, what's going to get them riled up. They then take that information, the military industrial complex purchases it. You've got political leaders who rely on that information, and they start pushing the buttons of the American people in order to get us to be their puppets in doing exactly what it is they want us to do that benefits them and their donors and their big money corporations, and yet what is detrimental to we, the people of the United States of America. Get ready because it's happening. They're already starting it. Rahm Emanuel, this is another indication of Democrats really going in this way, because really it's been Republicans in particular who have been more hardlined against China, right? We've heard a lot of Republicans against China, a lot of Republicans. But Rahm Emanuel is a very, very prominent Democrat, and he is now serving as the ambassador to Japan. And he writes this: as the BRI, which is the Belt and Road Initiative, as the BRI marks its 10-year anniversary, the legacy it leaves is a cautionary tale of lofty rhetoric and unwelcome results. China's BRI casts long shadows of debt and dependency. When the bill comes due, China leaves developing countries dangling in a sea of debt with their sovereignty in doubt. Let Djibouti, with one of the highest Chinese debt to GDP ratios, be a stark reminder to nations considering signing on the dotted line. So he's saying, look, China's going to come and give you a bunch of roads and bridges and infrastructure and ports, and they're going to build all these shiny new things for you, but you're going to be riddled in debt, and it's going to be atrocious. Never mind the fact that the way the U.S. deals with it is just bomb the heck out of you, right? Like, we're just going to go in and destroy you, level you, completely make your people poor, impoverished. That's the way we deal with it. Pot calling the kettle black in that situation. I mean, if you think what China's doing is so terrible, building up these countries, what do we have to say for ourselves? Destroying other countries? I mean, maybe just stay out of it and let them handle themselves. Those countries are filled with adults. Those adults can make their own decisions, and if they get themselves riddled in debt, then that's what they do. If they, I mean, that's so that's on them, I suppose. But Rahm Emanuel, a prominent Democrat, posturing against China, saying, "Look at China. Look at how bad they are. Look what they're doing to the world. They're building him up and putting him in debt. How terrible." Nobody says that about Germany, by the way, when they do this all throughout Europe. Germany owns all the roads in Italy, and Italy's in massive debt. And where's the warmongering against Germany? We're not saying it. Why? Because there's no benefit to that. They're our ally at this point in the world. So that is what's going on with the endless war just continuing. Just when you think it's one war ends with Afghanistan, we enter into another one with Ukraine, and now we're getting into another one with Israel with troops deployed and U.S. carriers deployed. And we're getting into these congressional reports which are telling us that we're going to need to get ready for war with China and Russia simultaneously, nuclear warfare at that, so the worst that it could possibly be. It's just never ending. It's absolutely exhausting is what it is. Guys, let me tell you about Cozy Earth. So this is really amazing, luxurious bedding that is going to change the way you sleep, I swear to you. So I have to tell you a story. They sent me a set of sheets when they started sponsoring the show for me to try out before agreeing for me to talk about them. And I was skeptical at first, like, how great could sheets be? Put them on my bed, absolutely love them. Really been really, really loving the sheets. Okay, so I got those. They sent those to me for free. But recently, I decided to buy some of the stuff with my own money, went to their site, purchased some, and it's not cheap. I'm not going to lie to you, but it is worth it. And I went to the site, I used my own promo code, and I bought a really nice blanket for the bed and some pillowcases. And I did this hoping that my husband would give up a blanket that he has been sleeping with for 20 years. But it's ugly, it's old. I'm like, we got to get this off the bed. I don't want to see this thing anymore. But I've tried numerous blankets in the past to get him to switch this thing out, and he's like, no, but this is the most comfortable blanket ever. So I took a risk and I ordered a Cozy Earth blanket, one of their bamboo blankets. It came in, and I was like, I'm hoping that he's gonna like this. And now the old ratty blanket is gone from the bed, and he's was under this blanket. He says, "This is so luxurious. This feels so great." And he's absolutely loving it because it's temperature regulating. And that's what he was saying to me was, I don't want to sleep with, I get hot easily or I get cold, I need my temperature regulated, and this blanket really does it. So I'm telling you, the stuff is great. Cozy Earth is amazing. It is made from viscose from bamboo. It is incredible stuff. And what's really great is if you do not like it, you get 100 nights and then you can return it, including the price of shipping. They will give you your money back, no questions asked. That's why I took the risk and I purchased the blanket and the pillowcases, because I thought, well, if he hates it, I guess I could at least return it. I could do the money back guarantee. Turns out we will not be returning the blanket. It is not cheap. I'm not going to lie to you guys, but 40% off is a really great deal. So go to their website, cozyearth.com, use the promo code Iversen, and you will get 40% off. And I'm telling you, this bedding really is the best bedding that I've ever slept on. It is not cheap, but it is luxurious. You get what you pay for with it. I swear to you, you will sleep better. Try it out, cozyearth.com. Use that promo code Iversen for 40% off.